STLTV, the president is ready to start whenever you are.
Yes, the stream is up. Let me start the. Okay, you're ready to go.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel and Administration Committee for Thursday, December 14, 2023. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Alderman Collins,
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Alderman Aldridge, President Green.
Present.
3 present, you have quorum.
Great. Quorum being present, I'll entertain the approval of the minutes for Thursday, November 30th, 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes from our meeting November 30th, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Collins,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge, President Green.
Aye.
3 aye votes.
Okay, with that, I'm going to go down to committee discussions and we'll go to item number 2 first, since we need to go into closed session for item number 1. So item number 2 is going back to our former discussion about BOA parking spaces. In the Google Drive is an outline of the proposal for parking spaces. I'll hand it over to Christine in a second, but we got several requests just based upon mobility issues and things like that of some folks needing some spaces that were a little bit closer to the door, since the board does not have handicap accessible spaces. And so we, I think in putting this parking place map together, tried to take into account those requests to make sure that folks that need to be closer to the door are able to do that. But I will turn that over to Christine.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the committee. Pursuant to your last committee discussion, I did reach out to the Treasurer's Office and Police Department to get some additional information about who was parking on Clark Street and why. And that city parking dates back to former Treasurer Larry Williams working out an agreement with the police department and city streets to make sure that headquarters employees had enough parking. Subsequent to headquarters moving over onto Olive Street, there was a need for the number of employees that were working at the Criminal Justice Center to have additional parking. So most of those spots are now occupied by corrections employees who work at the Justice Center. The parking list, the map that you have in your Google Drive, is the other thing that I was tasked with getting some updated information to you all on. And those illustrate the number of spaces we have and who's parking in them. We did not move any parking spaces between last meeting and this meeting. This is how they've been for the last few months, since really, I think probably we hired legislative assistants, and the parking spaces are arranged so that alder persons have spaces 1 through 14. Some people remained in spots they already have. Some people were put in places because they raised issues to me of needing to be closer to the door for certain reasons. And I've also been working with the marshals, the police department, and the treasurer's office. As many of you know, we get a lot of folks parking in our spots, and then that creates kind of a domino effect of somebody parking in somebody else's spot, and it goes down from there. So if we're able to keep, generally speaking, the number of spots that we have assigned to the people we have, I'd like to be able to do that. I know there was some conversation about the possibility of alderpersons having the closest spots to the door. Again, that's up to all of you. I think it sends an interesting message about hierarchy that may give some staff pause. So just wanted to note that, and I'm happy to take any questions that you all have.
Alderman from the 3rd, any questions?
Sorry, Madam President. I'm trying to operate buttons here. Christine, could you just go over that? Sorry, I was text messaging with a neighbor here. What would give our staff pause in terms of hierarchy?
Oh, I said there was some conversation in the last committee hearing about alder people needing to have the closest spots to the door. And that didn't take into account some of the issues that other staff raised. We don't have any handicap parking spaces for staff.
Yeah.
So again, obviously we will take the lead from this committee on how you would like to structure it. If you think it's important that alder people park as close to City Hall door as possible, we will do that. But I think we have done a lot of work with the treasurer's office and marshals to make sure people are parking in the correct spots. I feel like they have a better idea about who's supposed to be where when, and that's been the work of the last probably 6 months since July when the LA started. Not that it can't be redone, it definitely can. I just wanted to raise those things as things that we had been working on already.
Sure. Thank you. I guess my thoughts. I'm not sure if we're planning on voting on this today or not. I'm looking at the information that's in the drive. I guess just addressing that last portion. Not everyone on the Board of Aldermen is able-bodied. We're all kind of temporarily able-bodied, as I've kind of had to experience myself the last few weeks here on crutches and whatnot. But I do think that, irrespective of where the parking spots are, the alder persons do need designated parking. We are city officials. We are who conduct the business of the city. And even though some of us may not be at City Hall as regularly as others, I don't think it's appropriate for an alder person to, be looking for a parking spot if they're not, commuting otherwise or other ways. The mayor, the president of the Board of Aldermen, all the other elected offices in the city have designated parking areas so that they're able to conduct the business of the city for the citizens of the city. So unfortunately, in that respect, there is a hierarchy, so just need to be cognizant of that. But I do want to just also remind folks that there are members that, all of us are temporarily able-bodied anyway, but frankly, I don't care, where the designated spots are for alderpersons. That's not of consequence to me. But I don't know how we would manage a designated, parking area for those that might have some sort of challenge. Is that a regular parking spot for someone just because, of age or disability or ability or what have you? Or are we just going to have, parking is at a premium, it's limited. So I don't know if we are necessarily able to designate, handicap parking spaces for members or staff of the board who, would need them from time to time based off of, circumstances. So not exactly sure what the recommendation is there.
Alderman, I want to be clear, the map that's in the drive, these are all designated spots. So aldermen all have designated spots, and then staff has designated spots. I think what Christine was trying to make clear is last meeting, there had been a request that maybe all alder people have the spots that are closer to the door. But in doing so, that doesn't take into account that we have several members of staff at throughout the Board of Aldermen that have some mobility issues. And need to be closer to, closer to the door. And so the map that Christine put together has designated spots for everyone. We'll take it into account folks who have, for various mobility reasons, requested spaces that are closer to the door.
Sure, but if I'm not mistaken, the person who made that request was Alderman Aldridge, who his parking spot is still the furthest away from the door.
So that's, I think, the question that is being raised is we kept older people's spots the same to be able to account for staff who have mobility issues and need to be closer to the door.
Right. Well, I'm fine with what's in the drive, and Alderman Aldridge, if you would like to park in the 3rd Ward spot, you are more than welcome to, and we can keep the signs and everything the same, and I'll just park in the 14th Ward and you can park in the 3rd Ward.
I'm just getting to the office from previous meeting. I'm about to check the drive, but I appreciate those comments. I don't know what the map looks like at the moment, so.
From what I can ascertain, I mean, it looks fairly same in terms of the spots that are currently assigned to staff, and that it basically has assignments for the legislative assistants on the west side of the parking lot. Was that generally correct, Christine and Madam President?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and obviously, we always have the ability to move people around. I mean, it's definitely possible that we have additional employees that get hired or something happens to one of us. We can always move around to make sure that we're accommodating people to make sure that they're able to access the building as easily as possible.
I fully support that, and I appreciate the flexibility there too. I don't have any other questions or comments.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, any questions?
No, thank you.
Alderman Aldridge. No, you might not have had a chance to look at it yet. We're going through the proposed parking map.
Yeah, I'm just getting it up. I apologize. Not trying to inconvenience anybody. I'm just pulling it up now.
Madam President, may I make a remark while he's pulling it up?
Sure.
I do also want to just thank Christine for the due diligence and following up on the parking spots that are on Clark. I know it's not always easy getting answers from people, so I very much appreciate you taking the time to do that.
It definitely required several emails.
So so did the parking change at all? No, so this isn't what I kind of asked for. So I'm confused. I know I'm entering late, but it looked like, so the request was to have like the alders in the first front. I hear there's some mobility people. Clearly it looks like, I know Davis may be one that has mobility, but she don't come in every day. I thought that's one thing we talked about with the LAs is since they don't come in every day, so they're parking. But I thought it would have been like 1 through 6, and then on the other side 7 through 14, and then like staff, and then LAs. But I mean, you have some LAs that are like, yeah, this didn't change at all.
Yeah, the reason we did not do, I mean, we can change it, but the reason that was not done is because we have several folks on the staff side who have mobility issues who have requested to be closer to the door for that reason.
I'm not trying to be funny. Watson has mobility issues?
I don't feel comfortable going through a list.
Yeah, I would refrain from.
I would not be asking public unless we go into closed session. I would not want to be talking about individual staff people and disability.
I thought we was in closed session, but I mean, even not trying to be funny, like I know in Gracia you're pretty close up still.
I'm happy to go wherever the committee thinks I should park. I don't have a preference. I think all of the spots are very nice spots. I'm happy to, to be added wherever. We have enough spots for the staff that we have right now. We're, as I mentioned before, we don't have to worry about it right now. But in the future, we may have to discuss the possibility of sharing spots. If there's an interest on the part of the committee to put alder people as close to the door as possible, then that's something we can rearrange. One of the things we had mentioned before you were able to join us, Alderman Aldridge, is that for the past 6 months since LAs were hired in all of these spots have kind of been assigned, we do have a pretty significant issue with people parking in spaces they're not supposed to, that belong to the Board of Aldermen, which creates a domino effect of other people's spaces being taken. And so I feel like after 6 months or so since hiring LAs and having those spaces filled, that the marshals and treasurer's office finally have an idea about who is supposed to park where. So we're having less and less of those issues. Again, if there's an interest on the part of this committee to change so that alder people are closest to the door and the rest of us are further away, I can definitely make that happen.
I ain't got no further questions.
Right. Well, I guess the question for today is whether we want to go ahead and approve the parking plan. If we have to come back and change things, we can, but through approving it, it then allows us to make sure that the marshals and the treasurer's department can actually enforce when there are people parking in spots that are not part of the Board of Aldermen.
Madam President, can I ask a question just for some historical context?
Sure.
I think that the last 2 sessions were the first time that I've served on the Personnel and Administration Committee during my time down here. Maybe the session before, but I don't recall voting on parking plans in the past. I thought that was, kind of within the purview of the clerk's office for just like the administration of the board. Is it necessary for us to vote on this, or is this something that we could have some flexibility around in terms of, working with the clerk and others to administer the parking?
I am going to yield to Christine on that question.
I think the reason it's an issue now is because the 28 spots that are now occupied by both alderpersons and staff were formerly occupied by 28 alder people. So that's the only reason this is an issue. And there was a request by one of the elected officials that the closest spots go to alder people. So I think that's why we're having this discussion.
Okay. I'm curious, and I'm going to apologize for not reaching out sooner about this. But with the parking spots that are currently allotted to staff, it looks like slots numbers like 29 through 31 are kind of equidistant to the building. Is that a possibility to like flip those spots and use them for staff that have mobility issues? I know that they're Board of Aldermen staff, but they're not legislative assistants.
As I mentioned, it's at the discretion of this committee to give me some direction in terms of what you would like to do for parking spaces.
But okay. I just think if we're talking about having, staff, and when I'm referring to staff, I'm referring to all of the aldermanic staff, not just the legislative assistants. I don't know if there's a way to give preference to those like 3 spots over there, or any of the spots. I think I'm trying to pull up the map here. spots 44 through 48. So 44 through 48 and 29 through 31. If there is a need due to mobility issues for those spots to have a preference associated with them. I'm not even looking who's like in the spots right now, so that might be a foregone conclusion. I'm just looking at the numbers and the spacing to the door.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know what the question is. I guess I'm letting,
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, sorry. So those spots, 29 through 31 and 44 through 49, I think, or 48, those spots are, fairly equidistant or closer to the door as the, closest spots that the Board of Aldermen members currently, park in, and or on the opposite side where the LAs will be parking. So if there are any staff members, whether they're legislative assistants or, staff of the Board of Alderpersons who have mobility issues, could we not do some sort of, preference for those folks to get those spots that are closer to the door, and then have others, park, over in the 80s and on the west side of the strip?
I'm happy to do whatever this committee tells me to do.
So the proposal would be to make either spots 44 through 48 and or 28 through 31 be spots that have preference for people with mobility issues. And then instead of having all the Alder people on the east side, having 6 Alder people on, or sorry, 7 on one side, 7 on the other side, and then staff members without mobility issues in back of those spaces.
I think that's where I'm going with that, Madam President. Yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure I'm understanding. So I am okay with that. That's what the request is. Alderman Aldridge, does that satisfy your concern? Would that satisfy your concern?
Yeah, that's fine.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, any comments? Okay, then Christine, I think the path forward that the committee would like to take is making spots 44 through 48 and 28 through 31 preference for folks with mobility issues who work in the board, and then having 7 Alder people in the first spots on both the east and west side of the current parking plan, and then staff in the rest of the spots.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on parking matters?
Just, I think that's a 29, not a 28, Madam President.
Okay, I couldn't quite tell.
I couldn't either at first, but I zoomed in. I think that's a 29.
Okay. All right. Then 29 through 31. All right, with that, we're going to go back to item number 1, but to do that, we need to go into closed session. So I will entertain a motion that portions of this meeting of the Board of Aldermen's Personnel and Administration Committee will be closed to the public under the provisions of 610.0213 and section 610.022 in order to permit the members of the committee to discuss matters related to the hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of employees of the Board of Aldermen.
So moved.
Second.
Previous roll. Oh, object. I withdraw my previous role.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge,
Aye.
President Green,
Aye.
4 aye votes.
STLTV, if you could please put us in closed session. All right, with that, are there any announcements from any members of the committee? Seeing none, all members are present. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move. I guess nobody want to leave.
Is there a second on the motion to adjourn?
Second.
All
Bro.
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
Opposed?